Everyone knows the smile, but very few know the silent scream behind it. By 1917, Charlie Chaplin was the most famous human being on the planet. He was a god of the silver screen, earning millions while the world was tearing itself apart in the Great War. But as the cameras stopped rolling, a dark question began to haunt him. Did the world love Charlie Chaplin, or did they only love the mask he wore? In this second chapter of the Silent Empire, we go behind the curtain of Hollywood's golden age. We witness a man who built his own fortress to escape his demons, only to find that fame is a cage that never lets you go. This is the story of how the Little Tramp became a king, and the secret war he fought to stay on his throne. In 1918, Charlie did something no actor had ever dared to do. He grew tired of being a puppet for big studios like Keystone and Mutual. He wanted total control. He bought a quiet plot of land on La Brea Avenue in Hollywood and began building his own kingdom, the Chaplin Studios. He designed it to look like a picturesque English village, a nostalgic nod to the London he had left behind. But inside those walls, he was a perfectionist dictator. He was the writer, the director, the star, the editor, and the composer. He would sometimes spend months filming a single scene, wasting miles of film just to find a single perfect second of emotion. He wasn't just making movies anymore, he was building a legacy that would outlive time itself. The greatest test of this new independence came with the project that everyone in Hollywood whispered was a disaster in the making. It was called The Kid. At a time when comedies were only supposed to be 20-minute slapstick sketches, Charlie wanted to make a feature-length drama comedy. He wanted to mix the deepest sorrow with the loudest laughter. The inspiration came from his own traumatic past. He found a 5-year-old boy named Jackie Coogan, whose raw talent reminded Charlie of his own lost childhood. But during the production, Charlie's personal life was falling apart. He was going through a bitter divorce, and his ex-wife's lawyers tried to seize the film's negatives. To save his masterpiece, Charlie fled with the film cans, hiding in a hotel in Salt Lake City, editing the movie in secret like a fugitive. When The Kid was finally released, it changed cinema forever. It proved that a funny man could make the world weep. While Chaplin was building his studio empire, a new shadow appeared on the horizon, Buster Keaton, known as the Great Stone Face. Keaton was the polar opposite of Chaplin. While Charlie relied on emotion and balletic grace, Keaton performed death-defying stunts that looked like suicide attempts on camera. The public began to take sides. It was the first great rivalry of cinema history. Behind the scenes, Chaplin watched Keaton's films with an eagle eye. He respected the genius, but he was terrified of being replaced. This secret competition pushed Charlie to take even greater risks. He realized that to stay the king, he had to do more than just make people laugh. He had to make them marvel. This rivalry led to the creation of the Gold Rush, where Charlie turned the horror of starvation into a legendary dance, proving that no one could blend poetry and comedy quite like him. But as his art reached perfection, his private life was descending into a chaotic nightmare. The Silent King was becoming the loudest headline in the yellow press. His obsession with very young women led to a series of disastrous marriages and even more bitter divorces. His second marriage to Lita Gray, who was only 16 at the time, turned into a national scandal that almost destroyed his career. The court documents were filled with shocking accusations that painted Charlie not as a beloved hero, but as a cold and controlling man. For the first time, the Silent Empire was under siege from within. The public began to wonder, was the Little Tramp a saint or a monster wearing a mask? By the late 1920s, a technological earthquake hit Hollywood. In 1927, the jazz singer introduced synchronized sound to the world. Overnight, the Silent Empire began to crumble. Great stars who couldn't adapt were discarded like trash. The industry demanded that Chaplin speak. They said the Tramp was a relic of the past, a ghost that would disappear once people heard a voice on screen. But Charlie refused. He understood something the studio bosses didn't. The Tramp's silence was his strength. By not speaking, he could speak to every human being on Earth, regardless of their language. To give him a voice was to give him a nationality, and Charlie wanted him to belong to everyone. In a world that had gone loud, Chaplin decided to stay quiet. He began production on City Lights, a silent film made in the middle of the talkie revolution. It was the biggest gamble of his life. For 3 years he labored over this film. He shot the final scene, the famous meeting between the tramp and the formerly blind flower girl, hundreds of times. He was obsessed with getting the exact look of realization on her face. During production, his mother Hannah passed away, leaving him devastated. He felt the world closing in on him. Yet he poured all his grief and genius into that final reel. He was a man fighting against time, technology, and his own sorrow. When City Lights premiered in 1931, even Charlie was nervous. He invited Albert Einstein to the screening. As the final scene played, where the girl realizes that her rich savior is actually just a poor, lonely tramp, the audience didn't laugh. They wept. Einstein himself was seen wiping away tears. Chaplin had won. He had proven that silence was a more powerful language than sound. But as he stepped out of the theater into the 1930s, the world was a different place. The Great Depression was starving millions, and a dark cloud was rising in Europe. The crownless king realized that his movies could no longer just be about love and laughter. The Little Tramp was about to be dragged into the most dangerous political storm in history. Charlie Chaplin had saved his silent world, but the 20th century was about to force him to speak. He had conquered Hollywood, but could he conquer a dictator who looked exactly like him? In the next chapter of The Silent Empire, we witness the ultimate confrontation, the Tramp versus Hitler. Don't miss Part 3, where the King of Comedy takes on the God of War. Subscribe now to see how the Empire fought back.